It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. And this is Jan Anderson calling the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. We acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. First order of business is approval of previous meetings minutes.
Move that we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, second order is citizen comments, and we have one citizen who'd like to make a comment. Yes, please, so that the public can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mimi Wood. I live at 3100 Waterway Boulevard. I just wanted to first of all thank you all for your service, because I know it takes a lot of time and it's probably a thankless job, and thank you all for your service, because that's even probably more of a thankless job. I'm just here to voice concern. We don't go downtown very much. We're in our pajamas at 7:30 watching Jeopardy most nights. But Sunday or Monday night we went down, and I was really astonished at the culture and the quantity of people there, the crowd. And I want to be very clear, this is not a racial thing. In my opinion, it was a cultural thing. I would have the same level of astonishment if there were packs of 13 to 17-year-old teenagers, or motorcycle gangs, or Italian Americans, or whatever. The crowd was incredibly belligerent. It was very large, and there was a definite kind of like, I dare you attitude, in my opinion, like just a defiant, not to mention the smell of weed that permeated. In my limited knowledge, it's becoming a pattern. I know this happened a couple of times last year. I spoke to some people in anticipation of speaking at this meeting, voicing my concerns. Apparently there was an incident Saturday night where there was a very similar gathering at 36th Avenue and Palm, where it appeared that people were actually like arriving at a predetermined hour and destination. I really got to hand it to the police. I did not see Saturday night. Monday night, I was really concerned, and it seemed like they really dispersed the crowd. I was sitting at a restaurant where I could watch after I walked through, and before dark, it seemed like there was a steady stream of cars leaving. So thank you very much, because it was handled. I guess my concern is that it's becoming more of a pattern than an occasional thing, and that I would like to know, you don't have to answer me now, it's kind of, but is there a plan? My limited knowledge of what happened in Texas, there didn't seem to be a plan. My limited knowledge of what happened years ago with the sofa store in West Ashley, there wasn't a plan. And I'm just hoping that there's a plan, or that we can work on a plan, and that the public safety employees would avail counsel of that plan, because I think all it's going to take is somebody setting off a firecracker, or somebody popping a loud bag. And like I said, in my opinion, it was handled beautifully on Sunday, or it was Monday night, but it was like they were waiting for something to happen, like give me a reason, and it could have been horrific. And that's it. My only other suggestion, and it's not my place, but I know previous years we've had meters in effect until 8, rather than, I think they're in effect now only till 6. That may provide some kind of deterrent, because I think people wait to come till after 6, or when it's free. And I think that the concerns expressed by the merchants down there, that they didn't want the meters in effect because it was deterring residents from coming, I think that's been put aside, because now I believe it's free for residents. If you have a Wild Dunes or ILP sticker, you can park in the municipal lot at any point. And I was using notes, so sorry about that, but that's it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And if you want to stick around, I think the police report today may be interesting to you.
I'm sticking around.
Okay. But first, we're going to have a report from Chief Oliverius from Fire Department.
Good morning, Mr. Hahn, Mr. Streetman, and Ms. Anderson.
Morning.
Good to see y'all.
Yeah.
So in May, we had 111 calls for service, and we broke those down by, we had 4 fire calls that were classified as fires, 46 EMS, 17 rescue, 6 service, and 38 other, which hits the rest of our call types. We also had 2 incidents with golf carts. One, we had some batteries that had were on fire, and our personnel were able to extinguish them. We also had another interesting call where a golf cart crashed through a fence and went into the marsh, and PD and fire helped the owner with that. So something that's kind of unique to us, the amount of golf cart incidents that we have here on Isle of Palms. We also had a fairly large brush fire on Pine Island. We got out to the island, searched, and made sure that in the beginning stages of that fire that the island was clear. There weren't any boaters that we couldn't see from the other side that were stranded on there. And so we made sure that was safe, and that fire extinguished itself. Within about an hour, we had Charleston County bring their airboat out to make sure that we could access all parts of the island. We also had an interesting call with a dog that was being swept out to sea, and the owner went out to rescue it, and both the dog and the owner were having a little difficulty getting back in, and our personnel were able to get out there and rescue both with no injuries. So you can see there's a lot of different varied call types just over the 1 month of May. We also did a formal pinning ceremony. We're attempting with our employee engagement and retention committee to honor our employees, and how do we engage them. Engineer Cody Marlowe was pinned by his wife, mother, and stepfather on the 31st of this month. Still currently in the assessment phase of the department. I've completed a 60-day analysis, and then there's a 90-day, so another 30 days that Chief Hathaway and I will be evaluating different parts of our operations and how we're doing things, why we're doing them, and what is our return on investment with our time as far as training and looking at our deployment model. We had some fantastic training that happened this month. We had truck company operations by Captain Judge of the Somerville Fire Department. We also had boat crew member task manual training, so a formalized training where there's a checkoff manual for that. A personal watercraft training, which is a joint training we did. It was hosted by Aqua 7, an outside company. They came in, and we had 2 members of the Mount Pleasant Fire Department who were training alongside with us, so to enhance that interoperability and resource sharing and the collaborative nature of how we're approaching things. We did also an air management drill, how to manage your air in your SCBA cylinder to be effective, because you have a limited air supply. How do you work effectively? And if you get into trouble, how do you negotiate that? So how do you navigate that? So that was fantastic hands-on training. Battalion Chief Rourke, Captain Fassos, and Captain Stickney all went to an officer leadership development class hosted by up there in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So they were great hosts for us. We had John Salka and Rick Lasky speak to those individuals up there, and they had a phenomenal experience. Those 2 individuals, Lasky and Salka, are 2 of the heavy hitters in the fire service. They are very well respected, and it's like going to listen to Warren Buffett, talk about finance and things. So they were 2 great resources for our officers and our training chief. We also had, to the point about the Sofa Superstore, Assistant Chief David Griffin for the City of Charleston Fire Department. He was actually at the Sofa Superstore that day. He delivered yesterday a presentation on leadership, professionalism, mental health, and also reconstructing those events from the Sofa Superstore, things that happened and equipment that was brought to bear, tactics that were brought to bear, and now those things have been changed in that department due to that event. It's also changed the fire service across the nation and changed how we've done things here at Isle of Palms. So a lot of wonderful things have come out of that very tragic event. So he will be delivering that to all 3 shifts. He was here yesterday, and he'll be here again on Friday of this week, and then June 14th. The anniversary of that is June 18th. So coming up on the anniversary. So we're being very proactive. There's some great pictures of our people training, and encourage you to look at those. Our social media, we're getting that back up and running again with our Facebook, and we are knocking those posts out and getting some good information out there from engineer Chris Schwartz. He's doing that. He volunteered to do that as a supplemental duty. Our people expect it. I think our stakeholders expect it. You know, our council, you expect it to see what we're doing to have that digital footprint out there. And another great thing that happened yesterday, we had great collaboration with Mount Pleasant and their Emergency Operations Center. The county did a drill on an earthquake scenario. And so we were able to have Miss Janice Ladd attend and look at the finance section. How does that work in that emergency support function in their MEOC, in their Municipal Operations Center? We also had Corporal Hardy from the police department. Chief Cornett allowed her to go and supported that. She was able to see planning and operations, how that ran. And also Chief Giddens was there as well, observing the planning section and the operations section. Their emergency manager, Amanda Knight, is going to come to us when we do our drill later this month, and we'll have good collaboration and good feedback there on how we can get better, what great things are we doing. She wants to incorporate maybe some of what we're doing into their operations. And so there's a lot of good resource sharing that we're really working toward. And this is just a great example of that in the month of May of what we've done.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's all I have.
I'd just like to say, one of the things I think is most important that I think we're doing well now is that what is called mutual aid, I believe, among the different municipalities, so that we don't have to staff up for that one event that could be devastating on the island, because we can call on our neighboring resources for that, and vice versa, they will call on us. And we've seen that in action. We're going to hear more about it from the police department in a minute and how they do it. But I know I've heard about that. One time we were getting questions on Nextdoor about what all the sirens were, and it was actually mutual aid coming to our help, and we ended up not needing them, but with one of the high rises having a fire that was extinguished before they even got there. So I applaud you on that. One other comment I had was a suggestion: when you get the social media up and running, is one of the big concerns on the island, of course, is emergency vehicle access to the island on those busy summer weekends. And I learned this week that on those weekends, as a precaution, we will contract to have an emergency vehicle stationed on the island, which cuts the trip time in half, I think, because you're already here if there's an emergency. And is that right? The EMS?
So Charleston County EMS, due to the high call volume, we've been working with them, Chief Hathaway and I have, and on a couple different projects, but Chief Wynn, their operations chief, we've been working with her. So they staged a unit out here based upon that call volume, but there wasn't a contract involved. But that's an example to what you mentioned about mutual aid.
Yes.
So they saw a need and they were able to fill it. And we have a great relationship with them because of those travel times. And Councilman Streetman and I yesterday, we also talked about traffic preemption that Mount Pleasant has, and all their 65, 68 traffic signals for their fire vehicles, and that helps with response times. One of the Charleston County EMS units, Delta 3, their supervisor, they have traffic preemption. Mount Pleasant purchased that for them because they're east of the Cooper, and so they're able to navigate where they can hit every traffic light and turn that green, up to 1,000, 2,000 feet before they get there, and they can clear traffic. If they turn on their left blinker, it will hold traffic and clear that left turn lane. So if we did have a critical patient and Delta 3 was here, they would be able to hit all green lights until they got to the crosstown down there on the peninsula. If Delta 3 was ahead of the ambulance or behind the ambulance, they could turn those lights and change those lights. So that's something Charleston County EMS is investigating to see if that's something they want to invest in. And that's something that we could consider as well.
We
If
don't
we have
have it.
automatic gate. No, ma'am, we do not. But
Okay.
we have one traffic signal here, but for us, when we leave, our public safety building, it does become problematic at times when that turn lane backs up.
Mhm.
So as our units were pulling out, there's the ability for us to get some great benefit off of that if we did have traffic preemption at this light. And there are other different traffic. It could be synced with, obviously with Mount Pleasant, and we can, their units could utilize that as well. And Chief Cornett might speak about this, but we had a great shared project that was approved for click to enter. And that is where we can click a button on our radio and it will open the gate. We don't have to get out. So we're going, Travis Stafford, our fire marshal, he was talking to Wild Dunes about that opportunity. It was around $3,000, but for us, it's invaluable because anybody in the county, whether it's Charleston County Sheriff, Mount Pleasant Police, if it's Mount Pleasant Fire Department, Charleston Fire Department, Charleston PD, they're putting that in the radio template to where you can come up to any gate and click it. It just and it opens up. So you don't have to have EMS. They're trying to get into Wild Dunes. They don't have to have a sticker, for all the different communities they go into, or know the codes. You don't have to put the apparatus in park, unbelt, put in the code. Hey, what was it? This star, this pound. Oh, they changed the code. It eliminates all that. So we invested in that in the public safety building, and it's been great. It allows us to get in and out a lot easier. So there's a lot of benefit there to where Wild Dunes and other people that if they do have a gate, that it will allow us access in a timely manner, and also limit property damage if for some reason the code has been changed or the keypad's not working.
So what I'm asking for is that when you get your social media up, it would be really good to have something that explains what we do proactively to minimize our response times here on the island. One with the vehicle that could be stationed on the island during busy weekends.
Sure.
The other one is, I thought what that you'd mentioned before was the fact that you have that you can go to the site first, and you've got EMTs available on your staff to stabilize patients until that so that people on the island feel, I think, safer about these things. Lack of information, I think, is probably the best way to have rumors than anything else. So the more information we can get out there, it'll make people feel better and they'll know exactly what we're doing.
Yes, ma'am. I'm
So,
glad you support that. And
yeah.
those are great ideas, and we'll definitely do that. And our police department does a wonderful job with Coffee with a Cop and different things that we want to tag on with them.
Yeah.
We don't want to steal their thunder, but we want to be there to support them and also answer questions that may be, that they may not be able to answer, and to show our public and our citizens that, hey, we're here for you. We're one team together. We're meshed together, and we are public safety, even though we are, police and fire. So we definitely want to take advantage of those opportunities.
And the other thing, before I open it up for more comments, is that we will add the signal preamp as part of the traffic study that we're going to do to make sure it happens as part of that as well.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Chief, I want to commend you and your team for the what you're doing with employee engagement. And I think Officer Stickney and his team, of course, Chief Hathaway, yourself, and the group that were out there the other day for the promotional ceremony for Cody Marlowe, that was impressive. I think the group that were there, they were all engaged. They were all positive, upbeat. A really good ceremony with the family of Cody involved as well. And so I just want to thank you for what you're doing. It looks like that's raising, morale and engagement to another level over and above what it has been in the past. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for attending, and we're going to do a better job being more proactive in getting those invitations out, how we get them out to make sure everybody's aware, because it speaks volumes. It is amazing when they see our leadership, out, when they see y'all there. It is phenomenal how how impactful that is to our people. I sometimes am blown away at how much that means.
Oh, okay.
And so it really means a lot. So thank you for being involved.
Thank you.
Blair?
Tell me where Pine Island is.
Pine Island, let's see, the GPS coordinates are, it is, I could give you them, they're on my phone, but it is a small island that Chief Hathaway or Chief Cornett could probably tell you better than I could, but it's at the end of Wild Dunes, back behind the island, I guess in between Goat Island and Dewey's, basically, right?
So right off the Seagrass Lane,
Yeah, Seagrass Lane.
the last house, when you go around the marsh on the backside of Seagrass, the very last house at the end of the dead end right there, it's right off of their dock.
Yeah, probably about, I would say about a half mile.
Okay, and that's part of our municipalities within our,
That I don't know for sure. It's,
It's within our response range, which goes to prices.
right. Now,
it's not inside the city limits of Isle Palm.
no, but the smoke, obviously, they were getting the smoke into Mount Pleasant, and there was a clubhouse on there. There was a sleeping bag that was hanging down. So we weren't sure if, we had some kids out there, or do we have some adults, or was it just vacant? But a lot of boats pull up, and a lot of people camp there. So it was good that we treated it as a prescribed fire event. When areas do not burn in the wildland out there in the forest, it can become problematic because over time it burns hotter than nature is prepared or allowed for it to. So with letting it go ahead and burn, it burned low and it burned off a lot of that fuel. So if we have another incident out there, the fire event won't be as great. So we won't have as much fire. We won't have as much smoke, and it'll be healthy for the island for that ecosystem. So we just made sure that it was safe. And like I said, it's uninhabited and it's not in the city limits, but it's within our response area.
And the shack didn't burn down?
No, ma'am, it did not. No, it did not.
That's behind
It's
our
a
house.
small, it's a small, Isle of Palms is a wonderful place and a great place to grow up. And so I think whatever kids put that up and toted that wood out there, they were pretty happy to see that it was still standing, I'm sure, when they got out there.
Could be part of Operation Jackpot.
That's right.
All right. Thank y'all very
This
much.
is another one that is.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chief Cornett?
Here's another one.
You had a busy weekend, didn't you?
It was a busy weekend. We worked. So I'll start with the monthly report stats and I'll kind of hit on a couple of highlights there. And then I'll break down into specific stats for the weekend. But before I break into the stats for the weekend, I'll take a break to kind of talk about some of the bigger events that took place to kind of make sure we all are on the same page of what has happened. Start with during the month, we did have 2 community meetings. And we had 2 where the members of the community came to the Public Safety Building, and one was at the Recreation Center. And that was just to share statistical information with our residents and to let them know what we as their police department are doing, and to let them give us any questions they have or any guidance they have on issues in their areas. We shared stats specific with the areas that we were visiting. We broke the island up into sections. We have 2 more of those coming up. One will be in Wild Dunes and one will be an overall for the island, just for anybody who's missed it or just wants to come back and hang out with us because we're that cool. We do have a cover with the cop coming up as well. Aside from that, we had 1,251 calls for service during the month of May. That is a little less than we had last year at this time. 387 traffic stops. And most of the stuff you can kind of see in here. I do want to point out kind of we unveiled the Text to Park this weekend in the municipal parking lots and on Front Beach. And I will tell you, we had a little hiccup on Friday morning that caused a little bit of concerns. And so we were working through that, and that impacted the number of tickets we wrote there because we kind of said, hey, until we get this fixed, let's give everybody fair shake here. But then once we got it rolling and got it working and operating properly, Nothing but accolades from the people that were using the text to park. They prefer it over the app. They prefer it over the kiosk. And it was very smooth. We had less violations as a result of using text to park than we normally would have had with the receipts and things like that. So I would say the text to park was a very positive move. It just to go back to the parking actually goes until 8 o'clock. It stops at 8 when you do pay to park. So we do make sure that that happens. It changes in the parking municipal lots at 6 o'clock where you can start to pay hourly as opposed to pay for a full day is the only difference. And real quick, because of recent incidents that have taken place around our country, I do want to make sure that you all are aware that our law enforcement profession here on Isle of Palms, we spend time every year training on active shooter response. We are very blessed in the fact that we have 2 instructors, and between the 2 of us, we are certified through 4 different organizations on their different types of response. And that includes active shooter response training for law enforcement personnel. That includes active shooter response for the civilian individual. And then total, we had 3 other narcotics charges and then 12 marijuana charges. Of great concern, continuing to be a great concern, would be our driving under the influence. We had 18 charges for the month of May for DUI. That is a significant increase for DUIs. And with that, I'm going to kind of stop and go into our Memorial Day briefing before I break down any further. So over the weekend, I just want you to know, just over this weekend, 4 guns were taken off the street by Isle of Palms Police Department. One individual was arrested that was arrested for other charges who was federally prohibited from having a firearm. There was another individual arrested for other charges who also had a firearm that he was not allowed to possess. He was restricted. One individual was found unlawfully carrying a firearm that was also stolen. And then another individual that was just carrying a firearm unlawfully. We had several different incidents that we've kind of started piecing together with our partners here about how all this is kind of commingling. It all started on Saturday night with a large party at 3906 Palm Boulevard. That party had upwards of 200 individuals. They had armed security. They had buses that were bringing people in to the party. It came in as a noise complaint to the police department. When we responded, this would be the first time that we successfully used the new rules with the planning that the Planning Commission kind of recommended, where we had the response from the property management company. The property management company did respond to the location and did evict all personnel because of a breach of contract and told them they had to leave. We stayed on site with them. At that time, one individual that was intoxicated drove into a mailbox. He was arrested. He was found to be in possession of a firearm. He was a convicted felon. He was arrested and taken to jail. The group dispersed. And then on Monday, I happened to be the command staff officer that just drew the straw to work Monday. And I was out here. We had a large party in North Charleston at a county park. That party had a disturbance that caused Charleston County deputies to respond. They broke that party up, and during that time, they communicated that the party was coming to Isle of Palms. So we gathered our resources, and that party did come to Isle of Palms. Out on the beach, we received information when this group of about 100 people or more showed up. We received information that some were carrying firearms and that there was an intent that there was going to be an assault, possibly pertaining to the firearms. So we called in resources from Charleston County, Mount Pleasant, and Sullivan's Island Police Departments all responded. It was a great use of mutual aid from our local law enforcement partners. We would not have had near the success that we did had they not been a part to come out. I do want to throw out kudos. We called Charleston County, and Mount Pleasant just happened to see them coming through and asked if we needed assistance and volunteered. We didn't ask them, but of course, when they volunteered, we did not say no. They
Yeah.
came. We did get the group out. The group left the beach when we started actively enforcing alcohol, smoking, and other violations on the beach, and the fact that we knew we had armed individuals. They started to leave the beach. They went into the municipal parking lot where they gathered in the parking lot in different areas. Some gathered on top of cars that were not theirs. We do have reports of vandalism for vehicles that were damaged where they were danced on, or just damaged in general. We had one fight break out in the parking lot. We did clear the parking lot. Some of the individuals went to locations. One of them was the gas station. And at that location, we got additional information that individuals were armed and were prepared to become involved in an altercation. Our officers identified those individuals, made contact with them, and arrested both of them. One was either reaching for or putting the gun under the seat when the officers made contact with them. The other individual was in possession of a stolen firearm in the vehicle. They were both arrested. We have received information. We cannot confirm 100% at this point, but some individuals from this group were involved with the incident down in Charleston that resulted in the shooting at the Charleston police officer's car. So we're still piecing all this together, but it seems there are a lot of things tying these groups to different incidents throughout the county over the weekend. I am very proud of our officers and their reaction to the information they got, the quick dissemination of information among law enforcement, and the quick reaction to get partners here so that we could keep something from happening here on Isle of Palms and to quickly dissipate the crowd. So that's kind of where we stand with the weekend. And now I'll jump into some of our monthly stats on here. Yes, sir.
Was what happened Monday related anywhere? Was that group related to the Saturday night group?
That's the information we've started to receive. Again, I can't confirm that 100%, but information we're getting is indicating that yes, they were.
And do you know if that group was involved on the corner of Ashley Phosphate and Dorchester Friday night? There was a group of about 1,000 people that showed up.
I'm not sure yet. We're still trying to, it's something, I will tell you that I think this is an area where we can improve in Charleston County. We communicate well, but what we lack is we lack a gang task force. And I'm not saying this was all gang related, but my experience as a police officer who has worked gang cases is that there may be ties to gangs. And I think that this is something Charleston County needs to get on board with a countywide task force that addresses these so that we can find that information out and confirm those things. And I've started a conversation with the city administrator that should the county move for a designated gang task force, that Isle of Palms should not just be somebody that says we need it. We should contribute. We should put somebody full-time on a task force, either with that gang task force, or if that doesn't arise, with the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force for the Low Country. But we can't confirm 100%, but there's a lot of different incidents like that that are happening. It would be naive to think that there weren't at least some individuals when you have similar types of events taking place that are involved in some way. Not that all of them, I couldn't say that at all, and I wouldn't. But I also wouldn't say that there's no way that at least a couple were not involved in each one of these incidents.
The one, Dorchester and Ashley Phosphate was actually Dorchester County. It was right at the border.
Correct. I think
And
we
they-
should have a tri-county. I think if we approach, because we approach so many other things as a tri-county, but to start with, if Charleston County can come together, And then we build those relationships. But I think it is something that we have to do as a county, and Isle of Palms has to commit the resources to it with the understanding that when you put somebody in a task force like that, they're not going to be here every day. And Isle of Palms won't see the ticket revenue from it. They're not going to see the tickets being written, but they will see the impact of reduction in violent crimes in Charleston County, which impacts our residents as well. So that's a conversation that the city administrator and I have started to have to build on. And I think my hope would be that once that starts, that it rolls into a tri-county thing, because the people who commit crimes on Isle of Palms are the same people that commit crimes in Berkeley County, Dorchester County, North Charleston, City of Charleston, and Charleston County. We all share, bad guys don't see jurisdictional boundaries. They're going to go wherever they want to go to commit their crimes. And we just all need to be on the same page, working together. We share intel. I think that's something that after this weekend, we've seen where we could share some more information together, and we can really expedite some of that information that's being there. And we're coming to the table to be a part of it as well.
Chief, how did we get wind of the party coming here? I know you mentioned that it started in North Charleston, I guess. And
It did. So when they were leaving, they communicated loud enough that deputies heard it. And so deputies, we happen to have some deputies here working for that weekend, and they relayed that information to them, who relayed it to me. And then we started to make our plans to be prepared for those things.
Mhm. And when they come here, they park in the municipal lot, basically.
They do. Yes, sir. And,
Yeah.
and they pay. Not everybody comes out, and I hate to say that the whole group was involved in crime, because they weren't.
Right.
Some were just there and just fell victim to being part of a crowd that had individuals that were there to commit bad acts. But most of them paid for the parking. They did what they were supposed to do. And if they didn't, they got parking tickets like everybody else.
Yeah. I got calls over the last few days, from concerned citizens, and like the comments that Ms. Wood made earlier. Also, they were at restaurants and they saw what was happening. And I got the same thing, is that some of the individuals that were out there were just there for the show, I guess.
Correct.
They weren't there to be part of a mob or whatever. So there were some bad actors, but there were others that were, I guess, just kind of interested in, seeing what was going on. And, but the people I talked to, the residents I talked to, were very concerned about how it all happened as quickly as it did. They were all complimentary of how it was handled, from our law enforcement, but the ones that I talked to. But it's a pretty concerning situation.
It is. And it could be tied to a recent phenomenon of pop-up parties, which is using social media to plan a party and not give a location until just before. And then they send it out really quick. And then you have the large masses. And it's not just here in South Carolina. It's not just here in Charleston County. Up north have had issues. Florida's had issues. And some of them have been big enough that they've declared them an unlawful gathering and treated it more like a protest or a riot, and removed them in other states. So I think this is something that is kind of becoming a phenomenon with just the pop-up parties, and something that we're going to have to make sure that we're working to find ways to be ahead of that if we can in some way.
It's almost like the flash mob sort of mentality.
Correct. If they would just come dance in a
Yeah,
peaceful way.
right.
I know. Well, I just like to say that it sounds to me like the one thing that was right with what you did here, was the whole communication thing, from the county doing its part, to you recognizing a situation that could get out of hand and requesting help when you need, before it was too late, kind of thing, and everyone else responding in kind, and Mount Pleasant even stepping up, offering before they were even asked. I just think the communication that we've been working on very hard among all of our municipalities is paying off in a big way. And I'm grateful for that we did not have an incident here that we could have had. And it also shows us that we are not an isolated little community anymore, that we are part of the whole metro area, and that we definitely need to continue to work together to keep us safe, but also to keep the rest of the Charleston County area safe.
Agree. The communication was key. And that was one thing I will say too, this past month, in 2019, we used to do Chiefs breakfasts and they
Mhm.
stopped because of COVID. Well, this month we said, or in May, we decided we were bringing it back and Isle of Palms would be the one to bring it back if we had to. So we did. We hosted the first Chiefs breakfast in a few years. And but we did a little different in the fact that we invited sheriff's deputies or sheriffs from the Tri-County, chiefs from all over the Tri-County, our state. So
Is it the boat trailers?
I imagine the boat trailers were some of them and then some of the parking in the residential only for the marina as well. So Are there questions for me at this time?
I didn't travel down to this end of the island over the weekend. I've lived here long enough to know you just stay put, you know. But I have a daughter that lives down on this side in the 200 block. She was out on a golf cart, and she was telling me that there were people that were parking on Carolina, just leaving their car there on the pavement. Which is unbelievable. And
For
they were
Memorial
being
Day
ticketed,
weekend,
but you know, it's like,
we do get some of those. They were more brazen on Memorial Day weekend because there's just more people. So I guess that they just assume they're going to park somewhere. And then they get the tickets and they're not happy about the tickets. But we do write them. We did have an increase up in this
Right.
area, which we typically do this time of year for Memorial Day.
and it may be perception on my part. I don't know, but it just seems to me that, you know, Memorial Day weekend, I mean, that signals the start of summer for people. And it seems to me that over the past few years, it's just that's been the weekend that we just get totally overrun. You know, we had the triple parking back when we had parallel parking. That was on
Correct.
Memorial Day weekend, you know,
Yes,
when we
sir.
had all the triple parking on Palm before we had the angled. Am I wrong in that? It just seems like that Memorial Day and that entire weekend, things just seem to just explode.
You're correct. And a lot of it's got to do with that's the end of school. So I can tell you, my kids were all, their last day of school was Friday, the 27th. And then you roll into this weekend and it's party time. Summer's here. And so there's a lot of colleges have all graduated at that point, and the weather was fantastic for them to be out here. And we were busy everywhere. I came out, like I said, on Monday, and I will say this, I got here around 10:30. It took me 7 minutes and 58 seconds to get from Rifle Range Road to Isle of Palm Boulevard, which really is not bad. When I got over here, I got onto the ATV, I patrolled the beach. We had our emergency lane up. It was great. I took some time, got on the boat with our team, and we did some boat enforcement and checking out there on the ICW, and then got back on the ATV and responded to everything else that was going on. But it is definitely our busiest day of the summer, or busiest weekend of the summer is Memorial Day. It is the catapult for the rest of the summer, I guess, for everybody.
Right.
I know that one of the things that we've been having, well, I've always had issues with dealing with agencies or even the public, is we can tell them that things are bad, but they don't know how bad they are until they see pictures. And I know I asked Administrator Fregoso to ask you to use your drone, but I don't know whether you had the personnel available to do it this weekend to actually get some videos of what we're talking about.
We were able to do that on Saturday.
Okay.
We were able to put the drone up. The sand gnat was in the air, and got video of how the traffic looked, how the parking lots looked, and we can kind of share that because we want to review it too. After each busy weekend like this, we get together as a team and do an after action. What can we do better? What did we do that worked really well? And what are our plans for next Memorial Day or for 4th of July that are going to build off of this? So, but yes, we did get the sand net in the air, and we did get video. I just
Good.
have not had an opportunity to share that with Mrs. Fregoso just yet.
Well, we plan to use it, especially with talking with South Carolina DOT, because a lot of times it blows them away when they see that we're not just exaggerating, that things are even worse than what it sounds. But thank you so much for doing the best you can out here, I think is probably the best way to say it.
My pleasure.
Two
Yes, sir.
questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Parking citations on your activity summary shows that they're down 50% for May and 50% year to date. Can you talk to that?
Correct. So remember, our goal is that we want to see compliance. And as we improve parking abilities or opportunities, we should see a reduction in tickets issued. When we move to text to park and we have an easier way for people to pay, we see less violations there, which will reduce the number of tickets we write there. Plus, when the angled parking went in and everybody started to get used to it, parking has been more orderly on Palm Boulevard and has reduced the number of people parking in the no parking areas. So that accounts for some of that withdrawal. Now, I will tell you, when we talk about parking, I know that's an issue. The thing to remember is as long as parking falls under the police department, when we have a missing kid on the beach, everybody's doing parking is coming to the beach, we're finding a missing kid. When we have traffic that's backed up and we need to direct traffic, we're coming off of parking enforcement and we're directing traffic. If the best way to do that, outsource parking, and then they'll be doing parking. That's all they do. They'll have a mission with that, and that's how they make their money. That's their business. And I will never draw them. But as long as it falls under the police department, our greatest job deals with life and safety. And so that's where anytime we have something with that, I'm pulling people off of parking to put them on life and safety. And we have that much traffic on the island, I'm going to pull them off of parking to help with traffic control as well.
To that end, we've been contacted by a parking contractor that does the enforcement, does all that. I don't know if you're aware of that yet.
I'm not.
I would ask you to talk to Desiree and to review that information. It looks that they just did Kerr Beach. It looks like it's something that we might want to consider. They use also, which we've talked about on other issues, the license plate recognition software and cameras, and they would put them all over the island for their parking, and they would have texting and all, all that kind of stuff. So it looks like something that might meld well with your efforts. So
I would
I
think so.
urge you to talk to Desiree. Second issue is on the connector.
Yes, sir.
I understand that our jurisdiction stops at the flag, basically at the middle of Isle of Palms, of the Intercoast Waterway. Two things that have been brought to my attention recently. One is that people have seen our cruisers pulling people in Mount Pleasant. My assumption is that they did something while in our jurisdiction. We had to follow them off the connector before pulling them. But I want you to talk about that. The second one is I've had two people tell me that they have witnessed people when the connectors backed up driving on the outside lanes in the bike lanes and to get off the island more than it is to get on the island. Are you aware of that? And if you are, I'm assuming that's a Mount Pleasant issue and not a Isle of Palms issue. But if you could talk about
So I can address both. The connector is an interesting situation because it was a contract that we've entered into. So technically our jurisdiction, the municipal jurisdiction, stops at the flagpole. However, we have an agreement with Charleston County to give us jurisdiction from the flagpole to where the concrete meets asphalt on the other end. The caveat of that is any tickets that are written or any charges made must be tried in the magistrate's office in Mount Pleasant. I'd never experienced that. I had to research all these laws that gave us the ability to do that. And it is a legal binding contract that gives us that ability. Mount Pleasant should have the same thing for that same area. Typically, we're the ones that are responding to that and addressing anything on that end. The other part would be if we see a violation on the connector, you may see an officer wait to pull that individual over until they get off of the bridge for safety reasons.
Sure.
There's more room to work with, less likely to get hit when you're dealing with a motorist, or if the motorist, some people get freaked out when they get stopped. And I have seen people that are so hesitant or so shaken up, they don't know what to do. They open the door and they get out. And we have to tell them, get back in your car. We'd rather them, if they're going to do that, do it where we've got more room. That's why you see some stop over on that end. But we do have the ability to conduct traffic enforcement and enforce laws, just not city ordinances, from the flagpole to where the concrete meets asphalt. And then the other part, I forgot what the other part was.
driving.
Oh, driving on the side. Do we have some of that takes place? Yes, because I've written tickets for it myself. I know what happens. And when we can get up there and make that stop, we do make those charges. And several officers have made those charges. And we've even seen some golf carts think that those are dedicated for them to cross the connector. And they find out when they get their ticket that they're wrong. It is not.
How much is the ticket?
It's unlawful passing on the right. I believe, I'm pretty sure it's about $232.50, but it's a 4-point violation when you're unlawful passing on the right or on the left. So the points get you probably more than the ticket itself does because that impacts your insurance.
I did not know if it would increase to something more than that because it's also pedestrian walk and bike lane.
If certain circumstances are met where it becomes a reckless, the fine increases and the points increase. But to make it reckless, we've got to have a little more where you're putting, like there is a cyclist there or a pedestrian there that you are causing harm to because you're driving that way. But just passing on the right, it's a 4-point $232.50 ticket that we can write.
Thank you.
Two things. One is, I heard you say that our municipal lots that are now text to park, we charge for daily parking there. I know the county lot does that as well. And the county says in their other parking lots, they have an hourly pay system. And they said they have more of a turnover in the lots, that people stay for a shorter period of time. So they actually get to accommodate more people, more vehicles that way. I'm wondering whether we could change our municipal lots to an hourly rate rather than the full day. And actually, what it is if somebody's coming to the beach, if they're forced to pay all day, they say, well, heck, we're already here and we've already paid for it, so we'll stay. If they only have to pay for, let's say, 2 or 4 hours and it's less money for them, they'll say, well, that's long enough, we'll leave, and that frees up the spot for someone else. So
So that would be something that council would have to make a change to. I wouldn't have the ability to, it would require all council.
Yeah, this is something that's been brought up in the past and something we've looked at, because there has been some back and forth where there have been seasons when we have hourly payment at the municipal lots, and it increased the need for enforcement to an hourly rate, because you have constant turnover, so you're needing to make sure that people are paying and paying appropriately. The on-street parking between 10th and 14th is hourly.
Yeah.
And the intention is for that to be constant turnover and not being encumbered by people who go to the beach rather than people that go to the restaurants. It's certainly something we can look at again. But I think that in the past, the reason why we moved to a daily parking fee was not necessarily just a financial consideration. It was more about the manpower that it was required to manage it properly.
well, let's look into with the new system, is that taken care of more easily if it's text?
It's not the
parking and-
payment necessarily, is the enforcement.
Yeah, I know, but if it's, I don't know how that works, so we just need to talk about that later, I guess, about how the new system works. And whether, on some of them, I know you either pay for so many hours before, at the time you enter, or it clocks you on the way out, and however long you stay is what you pay for, so I don't know, we'll look at that and see, but it's something to consider.
I can tell you for now, the way that it's enforced is that the beach service officers are carrying the iPad and they have to run every tag. If they don't have a receipt on it, they're running the tag through the Flowbird system to see if they've paid text to park or through the app, and they get an alert there. In the future, when we progress to the LPRs for parking, it'll be really easy because they'll just ride through on the Polaris gym and it'll ding that, hey, this person's not paid. They can look to see if there's a receipt. And the hope is, as you've approved the budget, you saw 3 kiosks were approved in there, and we'll bring that to Ways and Means. But even the kiosks that we have looked at has the best price is Flowbird. It all ties to the same app, which ties to the same LPR. So then even if they pay kiosk, it'll all go to one central spot. So if they've not paid in any one of those in the future, the LPR will ding and the officer can print the ticket right from the ding and stick it on there, move on. It'll expedite their ability to work, and it'll be easier to manage those types of things at that point.
Okay, and one more thing, and then we're going to close up, and this is something that please, and all that you're doing in terms of evaluating what happened this weekend, and if there are any other assistance you need. I can speak for all of council, I think, and telling us how we can help to make your job better and keep Isle of Palm safe. That, bring your suggestions and requests to us, so we will be here to listen. So
Certainly. I certainly will.
is there anything else?
Nope, not for me.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chief.
Thank you. And thank you for your weekend work. All right, old business. The next item is the update on the study of the modification of the Isle of Palms connector. I just got the information just before this meeting, so
Yes, I did too. I
Okay.
shared with you all the memo, the current memo that I received this morning from Jennifer Bill, a traffic engineer. So I shared it with you via email. I haven't had a chance to read it. I've been on a meeting all morning, which is why I was a little late it shows the preliminary findings from their assessment of the connector and adjacent intersections during March. We'll post this online for the community to see as well. We just haven't had a chance to do it because we received it this morning. The next time that RKNK and DOT are going to come to the island to evaluate traffic conditions in the summer to get additional data will be in July. They're going to notify us a few weeks in advance just so that we can expect them. Another update I wanted to share with you all is we've already started the coordination of and strategizing the coordination of the phase 2, which is the corridor study that SCDOT has committed to working with the city and Mount Pleasant with. We have decided to expedite the process to go ahead and contract directly a traffic counting firm to get us additional data over the summer at the key intersections, including 14th and Palm. We also included the curve at 41st Avenue and Rifle Range. So hopefully that will help us get the work on the corridor study expedited with SCDOT. And I think at the same time, it will enhance, I guess, the trust that the community and the city could have in the data that's being collected. Is that something that the city will be hiring separately for? So, I can go through some of the points that are included in the memo regarding the traffic operations review on the connector. This is the off-season data. It shows that the medium speed for the IOP connector is around 47 miles per hour. You can see there the maximum weekend off-island and online traffic volume. For off-island, we're looking at the maximum peak time being Fridays from 2 to 3. For Saturday on island is from 3 to 4. The percentage of vehicles that the connector traffic consists of is about 68% of passenger vehicles, 19% pickup trucks or vans. Heavy vehicles accounting for about 6%, and 7% would be undetermined. They also, part of their observation of their study included the county park and some of the parking areas along the island. 70% of the county park was approximately full throughout the day, and the Oceanside Boulevard on-street parking, and we're talking 10 to 14, had reached capacity around noon. One of the recommendations that they have offered or they're evaluating currently is the installation of a "Be Prepared to Stop" sign on the connector with some flashing lights that would be triggered by some type of radar when congestion is approaching the bridge crest to mitigate risk of backup.
Rear-enders.
Rear-end collisions, which is most of the traffic collisions that we've had on the connector are rear-end collisions that could be due to a number of factors, but that's something that they had recommended that the city consider and DOT consider to mitigate that. They are also recommended that the city increase speed enforcement or the installation of speed feedback signs to assist in the slowing of traffic along the connector. As you can see, the median speed on the connector is in excess of the speed limit, which is 45.
Yeah.
That's something that needs to be included.
That means half the traffic is going faster.
That's right. Pedestrian connections at the connector and Palm and Rifle Range should be further studied. So that'll be something that'll be evaluated as part of their assignment. They have updated traffic signal alignments at the intersection here, 14th and Palm. They have installed a new seasonal intersection traffic timing proven to be, from observations from us, looking at the backup that you see in the afternoons, it has improved significantly, at least on our end. There would be also coordinating that on rifle range as well. We are evaluating additional signage, particularly 2 locations. One is a sign on the right of way at 14th Avenue that would require people to continue moving. And that is an effort to avoid people backing out on 14th Avenue and stopping, waiting to get into the county park, which in turn impacts the traffic along the connector. So that's something that our police department and I have been evaluating the language and approving that for that location, and also some additional signage on the Mount Pleasant side, helping direct people where to turn. As you can see, where to turn once they reach the end of the connector on our side. One of their observations that's included in the memo, in the summary memo, is that most of the traffic, it's turning turning right at the end of the connector. So one of the things that they're going to be looking at is that lane configuration, where you have the combination of turning left onto Palm 21st Avenue, going straight to 14th Avenue, or turning left onto 3 Chandler. So that's something that will be continued to be studied. So I don't, if you have any questions, let me know. I don't think any of us has had a chance to review this report yet, but it's certainly something that we can discuss with Jennifer moving forward.
In that meeting that we had with South Carolina DOT, the county also offered to put a variable message sign on the Mount Pleasant side of the connector that will indicate when the county park is full.
That's correct.
So the good news is that there will still be overflow probably in the city lots, because they fill up after the county park. But once the county park is indicated, then hopefully it'll slow down and people will maybe make other decisions about what to do about coming to the island. And just as a reminder, we're expecting 8 alternatives configurations. I don't know how they're going to find 8, but anyway, they'll come up with all kinds of ideas for how to restripe the connector. The committee will then filter that down to what we think are the 3 most viable alternatives. I think that'll come to us here. And then bring that to the public for their comments and conclusions. The final step will be for the DOT then to come up with the final plan. We expect the 8 alternatives, I think in this summer, right? In July, they said.
No, they're doing additional data collection in July, so it's
Okay.
It's going to be in the fall.
In the fall. Okay. That's what I was trying to figure out, is that. And I just want to let everyone know that we are on top of this, because I met with our consultant, Jennifer Beal, and Desiree this past week to discuss where we were. And we realized that if the city didn't take a proactive approach and do traffic counts at intersections this summer, because we need turning movement counts, detailed information, we would miss another whole season. So by doing that, we're proactively able to share with South Carolina DOT that data that they can analyze and move forward this fall, hopefully with improvements before not this season, but the next summer season. It's a cost-effective way to keep this thing going, and we'll see results sooner. I'm pleased with the progress so far, and I think we're doing we'll get some good results out of it. But we definitely need to bird dog it to make sure that they're not using March counts to time our signals. That's for sure. Any other questions
Yeah,
about this?
this information is from March, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so
it's off peak,
yeah,
Yeah.
off peak.
but we're gonna do summer counts.
Mhm.
There'll be midweek, there'll be weekend, there'll be morning and evening, as well as the afternoons when we have high volumes. So yeah, we'll have sufficient data to be able to
How engaged is the SCDOT in regards to the connector itself and possible restriping and that information? Do they consider what's being done here to be sort of an effort that would be binding, that we would come to some sort of agreement and really move forward in a positive way, make some changes?
That is my understanding and perception based on the meetings that we've had. There is a commitment to working with the city once those alternatives are developed, working with the city to identify the most feasible, model that meets both of our goals. You know, the city's goal, which is we continue to emphasize, is the emergency access. Is we've communicated that that's one of our primary goals, and for them is accommodating bike and pedestrian traffic. So I think that the assignment is finding a solution that accommodates both.
At least from my perspective, it's not we want it. It is a demand. We must have an emergency access lane. And I would just remind everybody that they do not have the legal right to do what they've done, or do they have the legal right to get us to do anything else by statute? And we need to be hard with them on that. I mean, that is a deal breaker for me. We have to do this, and we have to have an emergency lane. I mean, and I know it's not you. The recommendations so far seem to be, well, let's put more signs up. Well, that's exactly what we need on the Isle of Palms, is more traffic signs. I mean, you can't see the trees for all the damn traffic signs that we have everywhere. So I would also urge you to get DOT to come to this island during peak times. And so July doesn't work for me. July 4th works for me. Labor Day works for me. Both our police and fire departments plan on the worst scenario, because if you can handle that, you can handle everything else. This is no different. We need to plan for the worst scenario. So I'd urge you to do that. Thank you, Desiree.
I'd just like to say that I agree that it would be better if DOT could see for themselves, but and our way of dealing with that is to ensure that if we can get these drone videos of those weekends, then we can show those to DOT, and even if they don't come to us, we will bring it to them so that they understand what we're talking about. My experience dealing with DOTs is that their commitment is usually sound until you get to paying for it. And if what we're talking about with the connector, I think, is a pretty cost-effective solution right now. So that I'm confident we'll see something there. Beyond that, with the corridor study, it'll just depend on cost.
Well, they have not shown good faith to date, but we'll
Right.
see.
Right. So we will just keep after it. Okay. Anything else? The discussion about the noise ordinance. After this weekend, come on up. I think the noise ordinance has become a more important situation, because I think both the downtown incident and what happened, has been happening, is these incidences that we're seeing are being triggered by noise complaints. So what I thought is, if I can share a little bit of, steal a little bit of your thunder, Chief. I believe we're waiting to see how Mount Pleasant's updates of their noise ordinance are being affected. But in the meantime, I thought it would be good for us to get a little background information. So just spend about 5 minutes or so discussing noise levels and giving us some background that we can use when we actually have to evaluate an ordinance. Okay, take it away.
Makes perfect sense. And I would agree, we are waiting to see how Mount Pleasant does. And talking to Chief Reynolds from Charleston, so is the city of Charleston. Everybody's kind of watching to see how it's going to pan out for Mount Pleasant right now with their decibel levels. And But I wanted to kind of make sure I had a good understanding of where we were going, and I like waiting to see how they do before we came with a model idea of what would work for us. We would also want to know, where does it go? And things to keep in mind. Last month, you should have gotten, I think Lieutenant Forsyth should have brought you the different ordinances that I found from different municipalities. And some of the things that I pointed out on those were the differences. Some are by zoning, because maybe you have an entertainment district and there is an expectation for a different level of noise in an entertainment district than would be acceptable inside of a residential district. So that's one option. And then the other option is it one size fits all for the entire city? And before we could do anything, I wanted to make sure that I knew exactly where council was looking to go before we came back with any drafts of anything. And so that's kind of where we were. We haven't done much. We are kind of reaching out to some of these other municipalities, though, just saying, how's this working for enforcement for you?
Yeah.
How difficult is it by zoning? How difficult is it to step out or measure out? Because some of them are very specific about how far from the property line it has to be before you can measure the decibel, which seems a little bit much when you're out there. Now you're I've got to go 10 paces to set this up and then do this. And, one thing I can guarantee you from law enforcement is we don't really work well under subjective. It works really well for us when it's measurable.
Mhm.
And that is something that is, if it's subjective, you're always going to have a back and forth, because what might be a violation to me might not be a violation to Councilman Hahn. What's a violation to him may not be a violation to me. And that's where subjectiveness gets difficult. And I'm glad we're looking at this, but I think it's something that once I know more where council is wanting to go and kind of overall, we could move forward with it. But in the meantime, we're watching Mount Pleasant and we're reaching out to the other cities to see how for the different types that I laid out in that last, for Lieutenant Forsyth in the last meeting, how are those working for them? Because if they come back and say, hey, this one where it's by zoning is crazy and it's not going to work, then it's difficult to enforce. Then I don't even want to present it because I don't want to put myself in that same situation, if that makes sense.
From my perspective, Chief, it would make sense that it's a decibel amount, whatever that may be, at the property line. That makes it simple for you, and we don't have to deal with then citizens coming up and saying, well, the decibel's fine there, but it's not if you go 10 paces or whatever it may be. So I would suggest looking at property lines and decibel amounts.
And I did see some of the municipalities that did that. It just logically in my mind, that sounds like a super easy way to do it. It sounds pretty simple. Some of them, if you notice, some were even from the street in front of the business, they would measure it, which is great unless there's neighbors, because then that sound might have barriers on the front and push it to the sides. So there's a lot of different variables, but I do agree, something simple where we're not relying on them counting out paces and then measuring, that would be the easiest. And we're going to, I do want to call that municipality that's doing it that way. And that's actually how Mount Pleasant has their set, is from the property line, so that they can measure that way.
Theirs is at 55, isn't it?
Yes, sir. That's what theirs is
Which
at.
is pretty quiet.
It is pretty quiet. When you look on the sheet that you just got, 55 is going to be just above a quiet suburb.
I'd like to say something first about decibel levels, which isn't normally the way we think. It's a logarithmic scale, which means that going from like 50 to 60 decibels, it's not just 10% higher. It's 100% higher. I think it's double. And 60 to 120 decibels is off the charts higher. So it's not just double. And I think you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at this, that a small increment in decibel level is a large increment in noise. I think it's probably the best way to just think about it. All right, let's look at the, what we've got. Inside noise is normally inside sound. We shouldn't call it noise, I guess. Is like 50 to 60 decibels. 50 decibels is what they say here. And conversation in a restaurant is 60 decibels, which I think we would all consider reasonable, of course. And a passenger car at 65 miles an hour. That's, I've seen different numbers for that. I guess the car is making that much noise is what they would be here. But noise from freeways can be higher, I know that. And then different kinds of machines and operating things are like a food blender is 80 decibels. Wow. So, uh-huh.
Well, to put it in perspective, I'm running my decibel meter right now. We're at 50. For all of us,
now.
right
Right
now,
now, in
us
this
sitting right here
quiet room.
talking, we're at 50 decibels. Now, when Rusty spoke, it jumped to 58.
I could probably get it higher than that.
And, that's, that I think is a good thing to think about is you can get a decibel meter on your phone. And the best thing is to walk around and check for yourself what noise levels are. I know that I think rock concerts are considered 120 decibels, which is exponentially higher than the 60 decibels we'd expect inside a home.
110 based on this.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're gonna have to be careful, how we draft this. And I think this is a great start for us
Yeah.
understanding what those numbers mean in a day-to-day basis. And like Chief mentioned, looking at different areas of our community.
Yes.
What kind of noises are typical or expected and how we can best manage that. Because you can
Yes.
see, Mount Pleasant, I think, had a decibel limit of 55. Well, that would essentially eliminate somebody's ability to operate a jackhammer, which is listed.
That's right.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing, right? But, we are under construction and currently the city's ordinance does have a construction work hours that are limited. And that's
Yes.
something that was revised a couple of years ago to prevent that from happening on Sundays and limited hours on Saturdays to address complaints from folks in the residential neighborhoods.
Right.
Power mowers, 90 decibels. So I think we
Yeah.
have to, I don't think one size fits all is going to be reasonable. I think it's going to, this is something that's going to require a lot of study. Potentially, even after Mount Pleasant goes through their pilot program, for us to treat it as a pilot program, whatever it is that we come up with, because
Right.
it'll be very different than the way that we've been managing it. And I think some kind of grace period for us to know how any changes impact not only enforcement, but certainly the community as well. I wanted to share with you all that I have received messages from a resident near the Front Beach area
Mhm.
who this is same kind of family that has reached out to the city in the past concerning with concerns regarding the ongoing concerts at one of our Front Beach establishments and concerns about the frequency of that kind of activity happening. And I know that we've had a very open communication with our businesses, and I think that they should be really involved in this process as well. But that's a commercial district that the city may or may not want to treat somewhat differently than the middle of the island where it's more residential. But it is something that continues to be an issue for some residents in the area that certainly are looking to the city for some type of relief. I think we all know that after COVID or during COVID, the city was very open and making exceptions and allowing people to change and explore different ways of operating within restrictions that took place during COVID. There are no longer restrictions, but so I think that the frequency, I guess, in the outdoor music and concerts is
Right,
much
right.
more today than what I guess the community was used to in the past. That's just
And I think one of the things that I've observed from the noise complaints that we get are it's usually where a residential area is adjacent to a commercial or business type of operation as well. So that borderline is where we're going to get a lot of the friction. And that's where I think measurement, where we measure from is important, you know. In a business district, you can tolerate higher noise level, but if that noise level leaks over into the next door, the adjacent home, where do we measure and what's the criteria there? And that's going to be the hardest part for us to figure out. And also the main part too is what's enforceable. A lot of times when you get a noise complaint and if it's a party and they hear about it, you know, what do? They turn the sound down. So by the time you get there, you don't even know. So what is it that's enforceable and how, that's where I think we're going to need your advice. There are, yeah, it seems to me that the noise ordinance I've read and with my experience with traffic and transportation, noise is always an issue, is somewhere between 50 and 60 decibels seems to be a reasonable residential, indoor residential sound volume. Outside, maybe as much as 90. I think that's leaf blowers and lawnmowers and things like that. That's debatable. I think we can decide whether that's still reasonable or not. And then 120 decibels for rock concerts. I think it depends strictly on where that rock concert is, because I don't think it belongs anywhere near residential or even commercial areas for that matter. So, you know, I think that's where we start. And then, but the main thing is going to be deciding when we can have these volumes, where and how we measure it, and especially at that dividing line between a commercial and a residential area, how it's measured and enforced. I think that's enough for today. I thank you for putting this together, and hopefully we'll learn something from Mount Pleasant that we can build on.
What's our next steps on this? I mean, are we just going to wait on Mount Pleasant?
Mhm.
I think in the meantime, we're gonna continue to study other noise ordinances that have been successful in other communities.
Right.
Hopefully, you know, certainly we would look at similar type communities and start crafting something that would make sense to us. I see some, you know, further discussion with some of those findings being presented to City Council for ongoing discussions as part of the workshop structure that we're starting next month. You know, whether or not we have to fully wait until Mount Pleasant completes their study, that may not be what City Council wants. That may be too long, but in the meantime, I think that we can start just continuing to educate us and educate the community and try to fully understand where the complaints are and what the concerns are and start building something that would make sense for us. I think whatever we come up with and council embraces and the community has a chance to respond to, my recommendation is that we try for a period of several months. It gives us an opportunity to make corrections along the way and be able to have an after action to evaluate whether it worked or not. Because right now it's very subjective.
Yeah.
Right now it's essentially up to the officer responding to the complaint and up to the complaint. And even though there are two sections, there are different requirements, and right, you know, they're really not that different when you look at daytime and nighttime hours. Essentially, anytime anybody feels inside their home, which would be a change if we're looking at measuring decibel levels from the property line. Right now, the threshold is whether somebody feels disrupted inside their property. And so, again, that is subjective. That depends. There are people who may not mind the noise from a rock concert inside their homes, and there may be others that do. But right now, it's very, very broad and very inconsistently applied.
Yeah. We would rather not put the onus on the police department to have to determine that, you know, because
Yeah, I hate to bring up maybe a singular instance or whatever, but I think we all have been in receipt of, you know, one particular group of residents who are affected by noise that's coming from wild dudes, basically. How are we handling that type of situation? We get, you know, we normally see a complaint there, or do we have an officer that goes out and subjectively listens to that noise and make a decision? Chief's coming up, so I'm sure he's going to
He's
address.
got an answer. Good.
If they would call us when it happens, yes, that's how we would do it. We would respond and we would hear it. But again, it's subjective. You know, we're putting that officer who says, is this unreasonably loud, that it's invading their space or impacting their quality of life? And that's the hard part. But normally with that specific incident, we're getting the emails just like you are, not necessarily a call when it happens. So we do encourage residents, if there's a noise violation, call. That's what happened at 3906 Palm Boulevard Saturday night. A resident heard a noise violation. They called us. We were able to get there and go, oh my goodness, and address it. So the same thing with any of them. But yes, if we get the call when it's happening, we do respond. We listen to it and we try to put ourselves where that individual is. You know, we typically say, hey, can I come in the house where you're at and hear it? Do you mind? So I can hear how loud it is. Some say no, and that's fine. They don't have to. And then but at that point, we're stuck looking at, this is an outside noise. I don't know how it's impacting inside. That's again, the subjective part. But yes, sir, we do respond if they'll call us when it's happening.
Well, I'll go on record to say that my wife has never been bashful about calling on a noise violation. Back in the day when we had a rental house beside us, we don't have that any longer. And we got good response. I mean, even though it was subjective, when an officer came out, you know, then they would stand there and listen and then knock on the door, you know, and then take some action. So, I mean, I know that in the past we've gotten some good feedback on it. And you're right. I mean, it needs to be right there in real time. You can't do it afterwards and say, this is what I heard, or this is what I documented, because it's too little too late, basically.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
and that is a good example of that situation. And I think that individual is using a decibel reader. And most of the time when we receive those complaints after the fact, the latest one that we received, I'm sure you all were copied as well, indicated that the decibel reading inside their house was 61 decibels, which if you see from the comparative table of noise levels, 60 is a conversation of a restaurant, office, background music, an air conditioning unit. So let's say we have an officer respond, the complaint is that, you know, the decibel readings is between 60 and 65. We see this example, is that unreasonable at a certain time of the day? That's, I guess, the questions we have to answer to determine what is reasonable, what is our expectation, and what can be enforced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll continue to work on this, continue to educate ourselves and example ordinances and different policy recommendations that we can bring to council. And that, you know, we will continue this conversation with city council next month. So we can get, yes, we'll have workshops next month. So that could be something that could be discussed at that time.
Okay.
So we can get feedback from everybody else on, you know, what would be reasonable, what would be acceptable for council.
Okay.
I'm not saying we're gonna have a draft ordinance.
Yeah,
It's just getting
The criteria,
feedback.
we'll work on the criteria that we need for the ordinance. Yeah.
And I think we need to start a conversation. What is it that we're trying to solve?
Okay.
What are our options and how can that be enforced?
Yeah.
So we'll have that conversation with the full body and start crafting something for you all to review.
Okay, good. All right, moving on. Do you have to leave, Desiree? It's about your time.
I'm trying to push my 11:30. I haven't heard back, so until I
Okay.
hear back, I'll stay.
All right, Chief Gurnett, you're on again. At the last meeting, I raised the issue that I know, since my favorite topic is transportation, is that there seems to be several different committees dealing with transportation issues. And trying to get us to be more efficient in coordinating. In the future, since we'll be in one big workshop, everybody will hear the same thing. But I wanted to hear from you first, what you saw as the transportation issues that fall within your purview, with traffic and parking and roads and signals and stuff like that.
Certainly. So for the police department, it's very simple. We just do enforcement. We enforce speeding, we enforce violations of traffic ordinances, and we enforce parking. We will help out when we need to. If signs need to be put up, we'll help put those up. If we see something where we say, hey, this is an unsafe area, we may come to the city administrator and say, hey, this is an area that we feel like we need to get with DOT or whoever we need to address it. But typically our involvement in transportation is just enforcement,
Okay.
making sure that traffic is flowing. If there's a violation or something like that, or an obstruction, we get it flowing. But really, as far as planning or maintaining or any of those things, we don't get involved in any of that.
And I'll just chime in here, you know, we're a very small community. We have one traffic light in our community. We do not own roads with the exception of Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th. And there are other sections, very random sections throughout the island that may have easement from Charleston County, but most of it is owned by SCDOT. So the city does not have a transportation or roads department. Whenever there is an issue with a road, let's say there's a sinkhole that needs to be fixed, the city will submit that to SCDOT to include in their schedule. If it is in an area in their schedule for maintenance, so that's something that comes to us from complaints from the community or our staff who are on the road and, you know, say, hey, there seems to be a sinkhole forming. We'll submit that to SCDOT's maintenance department. They respond to it as part of their ongoing schedule in the county. If there are areas that need some maintenance work that is something that's owned by the city would contract that out directly. And oftentimes we'll get assistance from Charleston County, who does have a public works department and are able to respond as needed. Or we would contract that out directly. That is something that we have in our forecast budget for resurfacing of Ocean Boulevard between 10th and 14th. So that's part of a schedule. When it comes to transportation planning, in the past, and not in the past, but currently, we engage services of traffic engineers who we have on retainage, on hold, that we use to receive advice on certain issues, whether it's signal timing or parking recommendations. And we've used, as you all know, Stan Zeddy, currently now Jennifer Bill has been added to the team of experts that we rely on. You know, with any small community, small departments, we all wear multiple hats. So it could be that the police department is the one that becomes aware of an issue at the road, and they'll submit that to SCDOT. Sometimes it has been Donnie who does that. It's, you know, whoever's been made aware of a situation with the road, that's something that's, you know, submitted to SCDOT. So we really rely on outsourcing expertise, outsourcing firms to provide advice on transportation issues as we become aware of it.
And that's my concern, because coordination is always important. If the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, then things might get done and undone at the same time. So what I'm seeing is a gap of someone who could manage and coordinate those kind of issues, so that if Public Works is doing some road improvement, that somebody, you know, I guess that's you now that does all of that.
That is right, but Public Works doesn't do any road improvements. Our Public Works is specifically responsible for garbage collection. We do not have a road maintenance department. That is not something that is within our
Okay.
current resource. If the city goes to pursues wanting to have ownership of roads, that would be something any issue with roads is submitted to SCDOT for,
Okay,
to be addressed.
okay. And any planning issues now in terms of parking study or comprehensive traffic transportation plan element? That now is through,
That always has been done by the city contracting out a traffic engineer.
yeah, but who is the city? I mean, when you say the city contracting out, is that there's got to be somebody, I mean, I think it's Douglas now sits in on those meetings, is it? Or
No,
coordinate?
that is being.
That's you. Okay, that's what I want to say. That's what I want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever we have, when the city developed the beach management plan, the
Mhm.
beach parking plan, that's something that the city handled through the city administration. The police was certainly involved because they're responsible for enforcing it. So we
Okay.
want to make sure that angle is included in any analysis and any development of recommendations. But it is driven by traffic engineers that the city hires that comes to meetings, public safety meetings,
Okay.
with
right.
council, and then develops recommendations and plans. And then the maintenance of those plans, like the beach parking management plan, it is a joint effort between all departments, particularly administration and police department, who are the ones that are out there enforcing. So
Yeah.
whenever there are needs, and this is something that we've done since the implementation of the beach parking plan, every summer we have an after action meeting. And we have had those meetings with our traffic engineers, with SCDOT to identify what worked, what didn't, what needs to be adjusted. That's something that's been discussed with public safety and then, executed by the city in coordination with SCDOT.
Okay.
So that's how it works today. As the needs for transportation focused assessment, part of the reason we hire Jennifer Bill is to have another person helping the city guide these discussions and provide advice. But we
Okay.
do not have any traffic engineer on staff. We do not have any road engineer on staff. We do not have a road maintenance department. That's something that the city would contract out when necessary.
Okay. I think that's enough for that now. This meeting is getting pretty long.
Can I make one comment, please?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've found to be effective in the past, when I was on Public Works Committee, is Robert Acero was always a good person to go to if you had an issue that needed to be addressed by SCDOT, for example, a sinkhole or something, give Robert a call, he'd come out, he would look at it. He had really good contacts with SCDOT, and typically he could get a work crew out pretty quickly if he needed something done.
And that's
Okay.
a change that's happened in the past 2 years. We identified a need
Okay.
of having somebody that is foot on the ground. Yeah,
Okay.
boots on the ground, that can identify those issues and be, again, the coordinating person, not only for drainage and stormwater, but also facilities, which would include those that the city is responsible for. So that has been a
Okay.
huge improvement. And as you all know, part of the budget process includes adding a foreman position to work with Robert. There's several need there and something that I think council has recognized. So there'll be funds to add a position in the public works department that will assist him in those efforts.
Okay. Thanks. Anything else? All right. New business. I think I'm running long. Sorry about this. The discussion of implementation of the 4-foot parking setback on the land side of Palm Boulevard from 51st to 57th
Yeah.
Avenue.
I'd ask that be put on the agenda. The issue is currently in that area of Palm Boulevard, the sidewalk is on the ocean side of Palm Boulevard. All of the cut throughs coming from Wild Dunes dump into Palm Boulevard. The cars are parking around the edge of Palm Boulevard, so you can't see traffic coming and going or see small children. And so two suggestions that have been made to me. One is 4-foot setback, which is where we have everywhere else. We ought to do it all the way down Palm Boulevard for the same reason. And second would be to move the crosswalks so that they line up with the cut throughs coming out of Wild Dunes. go straight across and dump you into the sidewalk. Right now, the crosswalks don't line up with those cut throughs. And so you come out, then you're walking on the side of the road, then you get to a crosswalk, then you cut over to the sidewalk. So those were the reason for that, for the suggestions.
Yes, just a point of clarification. 2 years ago, city council approved changes to the parking plan that included requiring that 4-foot setback all the way to 53rd.
Mhm.
So currently it's 53rd.
Yeah, so
And between 53rd and 57th, there is an open ditch. Not enough space to allow a vehicle to park within 4 feet of the road without being essentially inside the ditch. So that felt, unsafe, and installing that 4-foot setback in that section would essentially eliminate parking in that, on that end.
And maybe that's what we have to do. I don't know. I mean, right now it's Wild Dunes workers primarily that are parking there, but it's creating a very unsafe situation, especially for children, which we have a lot of going to the beach every day.
One thing that we can do is ask Jennifer or Stantec to evaluate, traffic volumes on that end and maybe make some recommendations whether, we've looked in the past whether or not that area should be piped. The drainage structure there to be piped to allow for parking 4 feet off the road or any other recommendations. So that's something that we can assign her to look at and make some recommendations for the city to consider.
I mean, that would be great. I mean, if
Yeah.
nothing else, lining up the crosswalks with the coming out of Wild
Definitely.
Dunes, and then do no parking on either side of that crosswalk so that when a child's standing there, people can see them.
And currently, there is a setback along every intersection. And there is a 20-foot buffer where parking is not allowed on either side of those beach access paths on the land side. So those beach access paths that come out of Wild Dunes, there are signage there that would prohibit any vehicle parking within 20 feet on each side. And that was also done as we had residents from Wild Dunes come to the city with that concern and the visibility before crossing the road. So that was implemented about 2 summers ago. But we can certainly include that request of aligning those crosswalks in a different way to address that. We can have her look into that.
I think the problem is the beach access paths do not line up with the intersections where you would normally have your crosswalks. So you're gonna either have them mid-block where vehicles aren't expecting them, but they line up with the beach access paths, or you're gonna have them at intersections where they normally would be. So we're gonna have to choose.
Well, I think it would make sense to line them up with the beach access path. Otherwise, you're pushing people, especially in that area, Palm Boulevard, into the ditch or into the road.
So that's a good point.
I agree with you. I think, the beach traffic, that's where you ought to have the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Where people are crossing to go to the beach.
And if we need to, we
Even
could
if
put a
it's
flashing
mid-block.
sign if there's
Sure,
too many.
and then
Yeah.
push them to the sidewalk and
Right.
let them use the sidewalk.
Yeah. Because it's not so much volume of traffic as it is safety. One child is, all you,
Exactly.
is
That's
what
all
you're
you
talking
need.
about. Yeah. Discussion of parking enforcement. Blair, you asked for that as
I
well. Is
did,
there
and
more
I
on that?
think we've done that. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Discussion of entering into automatic aid agreement with Mount Pleasant. Do we need to, is that something?
That's for the chief,
Oh,
fire chief.
fire chief. Okay.
I
Forgot you were there, Chief Oliveris.
Well, if you don't mind, if we can go to item D. because
Okay.
I need to.
You need
go
to
a
leave,
different
yeah.
meeting.
Okay.
You can take action after, without moving the agenda, but I'll just kind of pervade that item. So these 4 items here are included in the FY '23 budget that was approved last week by City Council. As you all know, we've had some struggles with securing these vehicles. I think we just received some that were ordered last summer. So we want to get this process going. That's why it's on your agenda. It'll also be included at Ways and Means with some backup documentation showing state contract pricing that would exempt us from having to procure this through a bid that's already been done by the state. So we're just looking for a recommendation so we can bring this to Ways and Means at the end of the month. And that would allow our folks to get the orders So that's a housekeeping matter.
And I'd make a motion that we refer this to Ways and Means.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then Chief Oliveras will present some, the discussion regarding the automatic gate agreement with Mount Pleasant. That's something we've been looking at, something our department is really excited about. So Chief, do you want to? Thank you.
Right now, currently, we have a mutual aid agreement throughout Charleston County. We have automatic aid with Sullivan's Island. So the difference between mutual and automatic is just that. So automatic means when the certain call type comes out, which we're going to do for anything fire related. When a fire related call type comes out, then the closest units would be dispatched from Mount Pleasant and Isle of Palms. We would also get a larger resource base because we would be sharing their standard operating guidelines and in the Charleston County Dispatch Pro QA. So based upon that call type, if it's a vehicle fire or residential fire or commercial fire, we will get a specific package already coming to us. Many times that package is not needed. We can downgrade the response, but what it allows for is all those resources to be committed and brought to bear immediately. And so we have that with Sullivan's Island. It works wonderful. And we would like to expand that to Mount Pleasant for those fire call types with Mount Pleasant. So an Isle of Palms unit here could be, responding to Target, Seaside Farms in that area. And we would also get their resources coming to us. And many times those obviously can be canceled by the incident commander. But to your point about resource sharing, and if we have a large fire or any residential fire, we need more personnel than we currently have on staff. And the way to get our personnel there quickly and efficiently is through automatic aid. So we'd just be enhancing our current mutual aid agreement that we have with Mount Pleasant. Chief Hathaway and I are meeting with Chief Mixon and his staff today at 2:00 to discuss the parameters of exactly how we would do it and what we would do. So we're still in those discussion stages with the evaluation, the research part of it. But for us, it would affect about 180 calls, about 18% of our calls annually, where we would have those Mount Pleasant units responding to us. Now, that is going to be dependent upon, we have included in that number fire alarms, smoke detector activations, water flow alarms from sprinkler systems and things like that. So that number is elevated. But for us, we have the risk of, wind-driven fire where you don't have that in other areas. And so for us to get resources there very quickly, to keep our firefighters from getting overheated, even if it's something that's more of a low risk call, our firefighters out here can get overheated really quickly, and we need just good work rest periods for our personnel management. And that helps with that as well.
Chief, is there a cost involved?
No cost. We might see an additional fuel cost or on our apparatus if we're going across the connector and getting into Mount Pleasant. But that might be a minimal cost that we might see because it would just be with the town of Mount Pleasant.
So the difference between mutual and automatic, I mean, right now on the mutual agreement we have, you give them a call, right? If you need their assistance.
That's correct.
Okay. But automatic, they would go ahead and they'd get the call. They'd be rushing to the scene. Would you be able to call them off at that point if you had it under
Absolutely.
control?
Absolutely. So when the dispatch comes out, it would say, Isle of Palms, truck 1001, truck 1002, battalion, 1004 respond to ABC lane. That's how it is now for how we operate. And then the battalion chief looks at the call type. He sees the notes. Okay, caller states smoke and flames from the first floor, resident trapped or whatever, then he'll say, okay, then, all right, I need to dispatch. Could you dispatch me A, B, C, D from Mount Pleasant? There's a delay there. Also situational awareness. It takes them off of what they're doing because they can't drive and do that at the same time. And for us, seconds mean, lots of property or life potentially because of how fire moves today with all our petroleum-based products in homes, with wind-driven fires and that kind of thing. And so they would have the ability to look at the notes. Oh, fire was in the oven, fire is out. Then the battalion chief could do just what you said, Mr. Streetman, and say, okay, we're going to respond. Go ahead and cancel the Mount Pleasant units. Just keep truck 1002 and myself responding, and they free up the other Isle of Palms unit. So it allows for more effective, efficient resource management.
With the recent fire under the high rise that was quickly put under control, and we had all the sirens here that people asked about. Did you do a request for mutual aid for that to get
Yes.
those? Okay.
Yep. Yes,
So-
ma'am.
But under this proposed action, it would be automatic because they would see it was a quote high-rise fire and they would automatically respond.
That's correct. Based upon that call type, a fire call type, which are about 180 calls for us a year,
Mhm.
about 18% of our calls. So
Okay.
we would see them in some form or fashion. Maybe one of their engines or 4 of their engines, depending on what we had.
Okay.
And that would be baked into, so we're sharing the same, and we would also get enhanced ISO credit for that because we would be sharing resources automatically and also sharing policy and procedures. So that would help with our ISO as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Well, since this is my last meeting as the chair, I guess y'all will be glad that we don't have another one of these to last so long. So I apologize.
We'll
for
move
that,
to
but
workshops, our test on
Yeah.
that starting next month. So
I thank everyone for their patience. I thought we covered
gotta-
a lot of important
Got to
work.
vote on it.
We're good.
I second the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.